WhiskyJason here, whiskey from the viewpoint of an American. Today I'm smiling again. Why? Because I have a new cask share that I want to actually inform you about that I did. Now, not I bought the cask, but rather I was a participant in the cask share, and it's called TNT Casks. The one name is T for Thomas, the other name is the other Thomas. One is in northern Germany by Hamburg. The other one is down here in western Germany, close to where I live. I work with both these people totally a lot, and I like both of them, and they're great people. Now, what happened was, I'm going to pour a little bit and tell you what I have here. So here I have a 8-year-old, all of these are 8-year-old Glenrothes. This is a Pedro Jimenez PX Octave cask finish. Here I have an Amontillado sherry first fill Octave cask finish. Here I have a Moscatel first fill cask Octave cask finish. And over here I have a second Amontillado. Now, it was originally planned to have a Oloroso, but something happened that I'll mention in a second. Now, back in June of 2020, there was we can still use Facebook over here in Germany for alcohol if it is a commercial provider. So a private person cannot sell and do anything with Facebook with alcohol, but both of these people are registered businesses, importer as well as distributors for whiskey in Germany, and therefore they have their own little Facebook group called Fastteilungen, Fast Cask, Teilungen Share. So they have a cask share group. And in this group, they actually said, hey, we have a second fill. No, sorry, it wasn't a second fill. It was a refill sherry butt. And we're going to actually divide that up into 4 different casks. These casks are 60 liters. And so no problem, we'll just put those onto those. So the cask was originally gauged. Gauge is actually to measure something at 69.7 ABV. All right, so for all of you who think that every single distillery always fills up every single cask at 63.5%, wrong. Many don't, and especially with these old sherry butts, even those, they don't. They might have started with 63.5 and then went up to 65 and then went up to 70 and maybe even higher sometimes. 73 I've seen as well. All right, so ABV is the cask entry proof of whiskey over in Scotland. It's not regulated. It can go up to 90 if they wanted to legally, no problem. No one would do it, but it would be legally possible, especially with grain whiskey. Comes off the still at higher than 90 proof, so 90%, 180 proof. So it would be theoretically possible. In America, bourbon, 62.5 max. And that only since 1970, I just read it, 72, 74, 70 something. I think it was in the 70s they changed it. They actually increased it. It used to be much lower. So America in the 50s, 60s, 70s, in the early 70s, it was actually, I think, at more about 50 to 55% was normal. Good. Enough of that. So we had a cask, 69.7% ABV, and they filled it into these octaves, these first fill octaves. Now, Tom and Tom, TNT, actually got the connection to Andalusian in Spain to have a cooperage make them first fill casks. So octaves are smaller. Octaves are 60 liters, an eighth in this case of something. So an eighth of 500 liter should be about 500 divided by 8, 40 liters. So 50 liters. All right, 60 liters. Yeah, all right about there. All right, 480 is what we get there. So no problem. Now, 8 times 8 would be 640, but all right. So, and these are not old sherry casks. These are new seasoned cask. And I'm fairly sure they left like a 2 or 3 liters of that sherry in there. And they just sent them over then to Scotland, and then someone in Scotland actually recast those, re-racked is what it's called, and then this sherry butt, the second fill, or sorry, these refill, I always want to say second fill. This was probably a 4th fill sherry butt, and it was very inactive. Probably people tried it. It was like, what are we gonna do with it? Nothing. Sell it to the broker. And so they got their hands on this and was like, we can do something with this. That has a good base, but it's not where it should be. We're going to actually put it in these very, very active, very, very small casks and do something magnificent with it. Now, some of you may have seen I think it was about 4 or 5 weeks ago, I had from Duncan Taylor the Octave. This was a Glengarry. This was a 9-year-old whiskey that had spent 6 months in a Octave. In this case, it was a yeah, it just says Octave here. Months in Octave, 6 years. 6 months, I'm sorry. Yep. So oak cask and so on. And you take a okay or not so okay whiskey and transform it with these smaller casks, these wet casks, and you do something magical to it. Now, as I said, originally we had Pedro Jimenez, Amontillado, Moscatel, and I should have had an Oloroso. Now, this is also something that has a risk of doing business in the world is when you send pallets, so let's say actually in Scotland you find a bottling hall that will actually bottle your cask, which is very, very important. They put it on the pallet, you wrap it up, you send it over with a forwarding agent or a trucking agency, and then hopefully it will arrive after it's got on the ship, onto a container, whatever, and it will arrive in your bonded warehouse. Both of these men have their own bonded warehouses. So this was landed up by Hamburg, by the other Thomas in Hamburg. And what was missing? 24 bottles of the 90 bottle case, of the just 90 bottles in total from the Oloroso. And there were a couple other things missing as well. So apparently someone at the shipyard or at the trucking agent, the trucking company or the forwarding company, they took at liberty to steal some boxes. As we always said in America, fell off the truck. And so that's a shame, which means that was their loss. You can, of course, try to get it back from the insurance company, and it's always one of those things. So let's leave the insurance companies out of it for a moment. But the question is, you had a cask share, and different people wanted different. I wanted each one once, 4 bottles each. I paid 163 euros for 4 bottles. It means I paid less than 41 euros per bottle. That is an amazing, amazing price, if you ask me, for this cask strength 8-year-old Glenrothes, each in a first fill sherry Octave finished. So I received an email and said, hey, Jason, we all received an email. There has been someone has stolen some of our casks and so on. We don't have enough of the Oloroso. Would you be willing to take something else instead? And I was like, I love Moscatel. Just give me Moscatel. Okay, no problem. And so I got that. Very, very good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to nose these. And I think this is really, really interesting because these are 2 individual Moscatel casks, and yet they smell and they taste different. They both came from the same original cask, so it has nothing to do with the original spirit. It has to do with what happened in this cask. And it was about a year and about 14, I think it was 14 months actually. Originally it was 12 months was planned. By the time everything with COVID and Corona and so on, and supply chain issues, it took a few months longer than they actually originally planned. They wanted to have this thing actually in the market by the fall of 2021. It was January 2022. All right, I'm not gonna complain about that. So now remember, the barrel entry proof was 69.7. What was the bottle now? Cask strength 52.9. They lost 15% alcohol in those 15 months. All right, 52.9 with the Pedro Jimenez. Over here we have 56 with the Amontillado. Over here we have then our 53.9 with our Moscatel. And over here we have our 55.9 with the second Moscatel. This is 6410, this is 6411. By the way, remember 6411, this is the best one. All right, so on the nose, now the Pedro Jimenez and the Glenrothes actually just harmonize in a wonderful way. I get dark leather notes. I get here raisins. I get orange peel. Orange peel is what I'll get everywhere. For me, Glenrothes in cask strength often has that orange peel and that dark chocolate moment. It doesn't matter what cask you put it in, but I personally think Glenrothes and sherry often works just fabulously together. I get a little bit of a nuttiness here. Now, hazelnut to be exact. The Amontillado, this is different. This is actually between Fino and Oloroso. So there is a flor layer on top of the sherry, so it does not oxidate while it's maturing in the cask. There's no oxygen touching it like Oloroso. But this has a salty moment here going on here. This is my least favorite of these. Here we have the Amontillado. Sorry, that was the Amontillado. Here we have the Moscatel. Now the Moscatel here, I have more of a honey moment. Now, for those of you that are not perfectly involved in the sherry scene, so we have a grape variant, a variety that is called Pedro Jimenez, PX. We have a grape varietal that is called Moscatel. Yeah, and we have then our Fino, Oloroso, and our Amontillado, basically all from the same grapes, made from that, grown in that triangle around in Andalusia. So one type of grape, a different type of grapes, and a third type of grapes. All right, so that's why I love the Moscatel. The Pedro Jimenez, very, very sweet, very. They distill raisins basically, and here they actually, this is Fino plus a little bit of a longer wood problem or time. This is not as rich, not as dark as this over here, but wait, there's one last one. I don't know how to describe this, but this is almost like the perfect whiskey. This is so fantastically, perfectly balanced. We have that leather moment. We have the caramel. We have a little bit of a wood spice. Someone wrote, I'm going to just try to go over here again. I found this, what he wrote here. What a crazy dram. If there was a malt concentrate, this would be a candidate. An incredibly intensive moment. How can an 8-year-old malt be so complex? Even with water, it's still anything but flat. The dram reports back pleasantly after a quarter of an hour insanity. And so this is, I just tried this like winner, chicken dinner. This is great. So we're going to start over here with the Pedro Jimenez. I generally like Pedro Jimenez PX. You got the raisins, you got the syrup. It's almost like a maple syrup moment going on here. It's very rich, very intense, very thick. The viscosity is just amazing. Is this due to the original whiskey from the Glenrothes? No. Is this due to those sherry Octave casks? Yes. So, if at all you ever have the opportunity to do a sherry tasting, do it. Just to figure out what's going on with your whiskeys. If you have the opportunity to actually try whiskeys that have been matured in different sherry casks, do it. And if you have the opportunity, like me, to see, well, if you take a base product, put it in 4 different casks, what happens to those 4 different casks over a time period of 14 months? Go for it. What can go wrong? Yeah, I mean, this is like the perfect laboratory for training your senses to figure out the differences. What is Pedro Jimenez? What is Amontillado? What is Moscatel? And even the 2 Moscatels are different. Isn't that great? So, like, this is absolutely my wheelhouse. Now, if there are people out there that are great fans of those, I'm going to call those honest bourbon casks, older maturation, full maturation bourbon casks, Fans of those old single malts, you know, like a 15, 18-year-old cask strength bourbon maturation, those are the good ones. Maybe, but you're wrong here. So these are good ones as well. They're young. They're very, very flavor intensive. They're massively finished. The character of Glenrothes does shine through, but the cask finishings here are so intense, it's almost overdone. It's almost distorted. Okay, Amontillado, the salty one. If this was pancakes with maple syrup, this would be almost like a full whole corn, like a whole corn muffin. It's different. There's a little bit of salt in there. There's a little bit of a sourness going on here as well. I personally do not think that the Amontillado actually harmonizes the best here with the distillate h-Alba, but I might actually be very, very wrong. So let's see here. So here we have very nice finish. The individual components are nicely connected despite the youth and the fact that the distillery is no longer really recognizable here, but quickly excused by the fun factor. So on the taste, there's dark caramel, a little bit of coffee, that's true. Nice spicy oak, a medium bodied, long aftertaste. There is a little bit of a minty moment going on here as well. So I'm not amazed by this one, but I do enjoy the comparison between the two. All right, cleanse my palate. Going over here to the first Amontillado. This was bottle number 10, 6410. The Pedro Jimenez is still better. We're getting into a moment of sweetness here, almost a honey type of sweet, almost a honeysuckle type of sweetness. Also here, there is some goodness here. Dark fruits. The alcohol, and this is the thing that really kind of interests me. Everything went in the cask at 69.7. This came out at 53.9, and yet the alcohol here is the most present of all four of these. There's a burn, there's a bite. Nowhere else do I get a burn and a bite. Here it actually has that alcohol present. What happened? Also, here is the interesting thing. This has the least amount of bottles, 85. I have 95 over here. I have 90 here. What happened with this cask? Did it leak? I don't think so. Was it closer to a window that it was more air exchange? I don't think so. I just think that this spirit with this cask somehow evaporated much, much more and didn't interact with the cask as much as the other whiskeys did. This could have used actually a little bit longer in the cask to turn down the bite of the alcohol. Now, in comparison to that, the cask number 6411, this is, winner, chicken dinner. I just tried it the first time. I was like, this is awesome. So someone else wrote here, I really don't know how to describe this whiskey. It's such an immensely thick savor of sherry. It's almost defying my belief. The alcohol is integrated just perfectly. No burning, no stinging. Yes, it's rather one-dimensional, but the thing is, it does rather perfectly. Nice, nice shine. If you don't know how Moscatel sherry tastes, find a bottle. Lustau has, I did not know that Pinot Ricard owns at least a lot of Lustau, if not totally. Um, Lustau. Lustau Moscatel, Lustau Pedro Jimenez, Lustau Oloroso, Lustau Amontillado, Lustau Fino. And just try them. Blind tasting, you can see from the color immediately what you have. And I found out that I actually love Moscatel the best. And then if there's a sweet, like over ice cream type of moment, there's the Pedro Jimenez. And then the Oloroso was good in some cases. Fino has its moment, and usually Amontillado is what usually in my world doesn't win. The Fino would go great with a fish moment and so on. There are some distillates that are actually wow, and the other ones are just fights it the whole time. And so it's not always the best sherry to use to finish a whiskey in. But I do hope, I do wish that more and more companies will discover Muscatel and actually use it and send us a lot of enjoyment. Now, my question of the day is, what is your opinion of what happened here? We took a somewhat mediocre cask of very, very high proof whiskey from a distillery that's not well known, Glenrothes. 7 years of age. And then we threw it into these Octave casks. Let it sit there for a good 14 months and then bottled it individually. I think this is a fabulous, fabulous, fabulous experiment that we can learn a lot from. I'm going to buy those Octave casks myself and do something very, very similar in the future and offer this as a cask share next year with some of my super fans and people who support me online and so on, and do exactly the same thing. I think I've ordered a Moscatel and a Pedro Jimenez, or could have been an Oloroso, I don't know, but it was at least one Moscatel. I think this is genius. Do I want to try and drink this whiskey every single day? No. But is it a wonderful training field for my taste buds and for my expectations of what happens with a cask? The transformation process of finishings, especially in smaller Octave casks, yes. And I hope that more independent bottlers would jump on this bandwagon, take a big old sherry butt, divide it up into 4 different casks, and then just play with it. All right, so and then allow us to actually have store picks and say, okay, we can try this, this, and this. I do remember I was in Ireland for Whiskey Live Dublin, and there was one distillery, for example, they took the same distillate and put it into 4 different types of oak. There was American oak, there was Spanish oak, there was French oak, there was Hungarian oak. And you were able to try that oak influence. Billy Walker did the same thing. All right, so it's nothing new, but I do think that we can use different types of sherries with the same distillate and actually have wonderful, wonderful experiments, at least on a very, very small level, 85, 95 bottles. So we can have a couple people, make them happy and see what that experiment brings with it. But what's your personal opinion? Is this just a lot of messing around and just foolish nonsense? Or is there a little bit of wisdom to be gleaned from this type of experimenting? WhiskyJason here, whiskey view from the viewpoint of an American over here in Germany, trying rare and exotic whiskeys. 85, 90, 95 bottles. Not very many. Thank you very much for watching, liking, subscribing, sharing, telling others, and also commenting. All the best. Bye-bye.